Thank you, Ken. Good evening, everybody. So good to be with you guys. I've been excited to be able to come out here to MCF, and I've never been to this particular neck of the woods before. Funny enough, I was just speaking at a church in LaSalle just 3 weeks ago, so Chicago's become pretty big on my radar over the last month or so. But it's great to be able to be with you folks. Let me mention a couple of things that I have with me. I've got some wonderful dinosaur fossils. We'll reference some of these things as we go, but feel free to come up and take a look at this afterwards. We've got some pamphlets that we give out for free. I have this one, Did Dinosaurs Coexist with Man? I see some people nodding their heads. We can talk about that tonight, but a lot of people are going to say, no, 60 million years before man evolved. Well, we have some evidence in this little pamphlet. On the back, we've got a gospel plan of salvation. So if you've got a dinosaur lover, this can maybe hook them and you can get the gospel in their hands. Feel free to grab one of these or two if you can use them, give them out. I also have this pamphlet, 5 Qs or 5 questions for evolutionists. If you've got a friend who's an evolutionist, atheist, agnostic, skeptic, rationalist, humanist, feel free to grab one of these or a couple of these. It's got some great questions to get them thinking. Someone has said an accusation hardens the will, but a question provokes the conscience. I like asking questions. You'll notice in the Bible, God does that. Jesus does that a lot too. And then over here, we've got a couple of books on the book table over there. Let me just mention these really quickly. Come take a look at it afterwards. We have my classic book on dinosaurs called Chronicles of Dinosauria. If you go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, it's going to be $16.99 tonight, $10. Don't have to pay any shipping and handling. Here they are, so $10 for that. The soft cover back book I didn't even plan to have here tonight, but when I got done speaking in LaSalle 3 weeks ago, we had some extras. So I drove them over to MCF South, and so we have some as long as supplies last. But this is for kiddos. This is for elementary, very simple language. Each chapter is a very simple story wrapping around a apologetics thought. And so it's great for family devotions, great for junior churches, Sunday schools, homeschoolers, or just for the family to read together. So Dino Dave's Adventures, you can feel free to take a look at these things. We do take PayPal, I take cash, check, firstborn child, blood donation, you know, any of these things. Okay, Brother Ken, can we switch over to my slides here? That'd be great. We're going to talk a little bit about the creation investigation. And I do have a website out there. And the website is Genesis Park. So kind of like Jurassic Park, but Genesis Park. And our tagline for the website at Genesis Park is Dinosaurs, Living Evidence of a Powerful Creator. So that's kind of going to be one of our themes as we go through our creation investigation this evening. But first I want to give you some really deep scientific thoughts. People give me this kind of thing because they think that, you know, this might be really impressive. So tell me what you think of this deeper scientific wisdom. Eagles may soar, but weasels don't get sucked into jet engines. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. You guys get that? What happens to the first mouse, kids? Huh? Yeah, he's bad shape, right? He's flattened. Okay. I almost had a psychic girlfriend, but she left me before we met. If Barbie is so popular, why do you have to buy her friends? Support bacteria, they're the only culture some people have. That's true. If you choke a Smurf, what color does it turn? What happens if you get scared half to death twice? This could be bad, this could be bad. Energizer Bunny arrested, charged with battery. I poured spot remover on my dog, now he's gone. Wear short sleeves, support your right to bear arms. Okay, some of these are pretty bad. Finally, corduroy pillows, they're making headlines. Okay. All right. I'm not a comedian, I'm just a dinosaur guy. But let's talk about the truth about dinosaurs. The truth about dinosaurs. As I mentioned, I've got the Genesis Park website, so some of what I go through, if you like it, you can go out there, you can share it with people. And as I said, we like to say dinosaurs are living evidence of a powerful creator. One of the questions I get asked is, what happened to you? How did you go from being an ordinary, normal young man to morphing into Dino Dave? And I have to give credit to the Boston Museum of Science. When I was in 9th grade, we took a field trip to the Boston Museum of Science, our Christian school did, and this was my first chance to see a real dinosaur skeleton. At least at that time, and I think they still do, they had this Triceratops. You guys, you go to the Chicago Field Museum, you guys got T-Rex. Well, we were pretty happy to have a Triceratops there in Boston. And I remember as a kid, I was just, wow, like this is real. This is real bones. This is awesome. And then I looked down at the sign and it said, this dinosaur lived 60 million years ago. And folks, I remember just getting distressed as a young man thinking, that's somebody's interpretation. That's somebody's worldview. That's somebody's speculation. That's not science. I mean, at least say, some people believe that these dinosaurs lived 60 million years ago, or one of the interpretations or something like that. And I actually got in an argument with some of the staff at the Boston Museum of Science as a 9th grader. So I have to give them credit all over the world as I speak that they kind of started me to becoming Dino Dave. I don't know if they appreciate me giving them credit for that, but there have been some major changes in the secular view about dinosaurs over the years. Let me illustrate. Here is Life magazine all the way back in 1953, before I was even born, believe it or not. It's true. Dinosaurs grew so vast and ponderous, they expanded into decadence and doom. Basically, they say dinosaurs got so fat, they all went extinct. Well, that was 1953. Then we have Newsweek. They're back, rethinking the riddle of the dinosaurs. So obviously, you know, Life magazine didn't get it right. Well, here's Time magazine. The truth about dinosaurs. Surprise, just about everything you believe is wrong. Well, unfortunately, just about everything in that article is wrong. And then here is National Geographic. My friends, this is 2024. Our understanding of dinosaurs is seeing a revolution, one fueled by a wealth of fresh fossils and innovative research techniques, revolutionizing our idea of dinosaurs. Here's what I want to cover today. I want to tell you why I say dinosaurs are living evidence of a powerful creator. Then I want to talk about some evidence that dinosaurs did actually coexist with man. We did this presentation at MCF South, and there was a person that came and said, I've never heard any of this before. And maybe this is your first time exposed to a creation viewpoint. We are so glad you're here. I'm not here to argue with you or debate with you, but just open your mind and listen to the evidence as we go through some of the evidence from the Bible, history, and the fossil analysis. And then finally, we're going to have some fun. And I'm going to take you on a dinosaur hunting expedition. Could it be that there's still some relic species out there today? Well, we're going to talk about that as we wrap up. Okay, living evidence of powerful creator. I always like to start every one of my sessions and end every one of my sessions with the Word of God. Why? I know Ken agrees with me with this, but truly I believe that the Bible is self-authenticating. Apologetics is not mainly an evangelistic tool. Oh, it can be helpful, no doubt. But the Bible is our offensive weapon. We just use it, and it has power to transform lives. I look at apologetics as glorifying God and increasing the faith of believers. And it's great that way, but we want to get God's word in. So our jumping off spot from the Bible this evening is going to be Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 28. If you've got your Bible or your app, feel free to turn, but I will have all the verses on the overhead as well. So Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 28 says this, Hast thou not known? Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, faints not, neither is weary? There is no searching of his understanding. Now here the prophet Isaiah is asking an incredulous question. How can you not know this? I mean, how can it be possible that you don't know this? And he specifically says 3 things in this verse about the creator that we should be able to learn just from looking at creation, just from looking at the stars and looking at the animals and the stuff around about us. Theologians call this general revelation, just looking at the world. Now, there's 3 things in that verse. You've got it in front of you on your Bible or your app, or maybe up on the overhead here. Can somebody tell me one of the 3 things that we can learn about the Creator just from looking at the world? You see one there? There's 3 of them. Somebody see one? Yeah, so we do, he's saying, haven't you heard, haven't you known? But I want to know characteristics about the Creator. Yes? Very good, he's everlasting. And so we see here that whoever made the space, mass, time continuum must themselves live outside of time. They have made time, right? So God is everlasting. That's one of them. There's 2 more. Yes. He's never weary. Excellent. Now, we have a big, fancy theological word for that. He is omnipotent. Very good. He never gets tired. Hey, the strongest people in the world are going to get tired eventually, right? God never gets tired. There's one more thing there. Okay, he is a creator, but I'm looking for characteristics of the creator. His understanding, right? And we have a theological word for that too. We would say he is omniscient, right? And so the prophet Isaiah is saying, just from looking at the world, never mind the Bible, you should be able to understand the Creator is timeless. He's eternal. He is omnipotent. He's omniscient. These are things you should just look at the world and you should be able to ascertain about the Creator God. Now, that is general revelation. What part do these big, impressive creatures like dinosaurs play in that cosmic message? Well, number one, we're wowed and awed by dinosaurs because of how big they are. They're just plain impressive. And that tells us a little bit about how big our God is. And we'll talk a little more about that as we go. But then also, like all of biology, they are very complex. We just talked about this. The evolutionists, the secular scientists, haven't figured out the dinosaurs completely. And that helps us understand God's intelligence. And then number three, there's some evidence that they exist today. And if anything, they are smaller, arguably de-evolved. Hey, can I tell you a little secret? Everything in the fossil record was larger, healthier, and lived longer in the past. We're not talking about evolution over time. We're talking about de-evolution over time. God made things good, and it goes downhill from there. And then no plausible naturalistic origin. Can you believe the evolutionists can't even get together and come up with a consistent message as to where the dinosaurs evolved from? Here is a quote from the British Museum of Natural History, and they say this is 2019, dinosaurs are one of the most successful groups of animals to have roamed the planet, from small creatures just a few feet long to some of the largest animals ever to have walked Earth. But despite their long evolutionary history, the origin of dinosaurs remains shrouded in mystery. When they first appeared, they were already recognizably dinosaurs. So if you're looking through the rock record, there's nothing, 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 and then all of a sudden, poof, fully formed dinosaurs. Kind of like as if they were created. Maybe because they were created. But that doesn't stop the evolutionists from using dinosaurs. We talked about this at the Museum of Science. Here is an evolutionist in his book, Endless Forms Most Beautiful. He says, dinosaurs are the poster children of evolution. They inspire the vast majority of those who touch them. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Sean Carroll. Evolutionists have been very successful at co-opting the dinosaurs and using them to sell, especially kids, a godless theory of origins. And that distresses me, that troubles me. And that's part of why I'm passionate about reclaiming the dinosaurs for the glory of God. Now, how about this? You ever heard this one? Dinosaurs evolved to birds. Dino Dave, you're so dumb. Don't you know when you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, you're eating a dinosaur? How many heard this story about dinosaurs to birds? You guys have heard that one? Here's what they don't tell you in the museums. In the same rock layer as the dinosaurs, paleontologists have found 432 mammal species and also a bunch of bird species. Look at this, parrots, owls, penguins, ducks, loons, albatross, cormorants, sandpipers, avocets, all found in the exact same rock layer as the dinosaurs. Now follow me with this now. If you've got a dinosaurian, maybe something like a velociraptor, that's slowly over millions of years going to become the first proto-bird, which then slowly over millions of years is going to diversify to all the different kinds of modern birds, how can you have fully modern birds buried right alongside the dinosaurs? No, it doesn't make sense. And creationists have been saying this for years. Folks, this is Creation Magazine in 2011. Now watch this. This is National Geographic in 2024. This just came out this month. The picture emerging now shows animals that look very much like modern birds. Hello? Flying, diving, and pecking in the shadow of the dinosaurs. A select few made it through the mass extinction. That's when birds, as we know them, really took off. Sounds like they're saying the same thing the creationists have been saying all along. I love it. It's a fun time to be a creationist. Well, how about this? What killed off the dinosaurs? A meteorite, Dino Dave. Don't you know? It went from being this reptilian paradise to being so rough they all went extinct because a meteor and the Yucatan Peninsula, and they all went extinct.
Yep. They all had to be in the same spot, right?
They had to be in the same spot, and it pulverized them.
Yeah.
Bam! They were thinking the meteor was going to take them all to heaven, and instead they all got squashed. Can I tell you something? Not even a majority of paleontologists believe the meteor theory. There's like 24 theories, and there's none of them that have a majority of paleontologists behind them. So when you kind of get talking to them behind closed doors, they're like, yeah, there's major problems with the meteor theory. Like, how can thin-skinned lizards survive if dinosaurs couldn't survive? How come crocodilians and Komodo dragons, if their physiology is very close to dinosaurs, how come they survive? You see, it doesn't really even make sense. So what would we say as creationists caused them by and large to go extinct? Okay, now the flood made the fossils. I got some cool fossils here. I have a T-Rex tooth here. I've got a velociraptor claw. Come take a look at some of this afterwards. I got a dinosaur knee bone here. I have got some coprolite. Does anybody know what coprolite is? Yeah.
It's excrement of dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's dinosaur doo-doo. Yeah. Fossilized dino doo-doo. Take a look at it afterwards. But no, some of them say, well, maybe the oxygen changed after, a while, and that's one of the theories that the paleontologists have. How about this theory? You think maybe they missed the boat? Maybe they got the date wrong? No. We know God was in charge of this, and God made sure there were 2 of every kind on the ark. So what would we say as creationists? We would say, number 1, post-flood environmental changes. You've probably had people through the talk on the Ice Age, but we believe subsequent to the flood, maybe 700 years, 500 years to build up, 200 years to fall off, there was an Ice Age. Now you have cold-blooded reptiles. They're not going to survive so good. Maybe on the tropics and stuff, but a lot of these other places, they're not going to survive so well in an Ice Age. But then you can't take people out of the equation. People impact large, scary, threatening creatures. And we've got lots of stories of people that hunted them because they were a threat or killed them for food or medicine, or people want to be a hero. And you can get a lot of hamburgers off a T-Rex like that, right? But then I believe some did survive till fairly recent times, and we have reports in lots of cultures about dragons. Okay, we talked a little bit about why I say they're living evidence of a powerful creator. Let's talk about dinosaurs coexisting with man. Now, when I do this talk in secular circles, and I go to universities, I go to public schools whenever I can, and I've been to quite a few, amazingly enough. I don't, bring in the Bible, I just talk about the evidence. And people are like, dinosaurs coexisting with man? That's impossible, there's no way. Well, I read that in National Geographic that, dinosaurs have never lived with man. Well, we're going to use the Bible to explain the dinosaurs tonight. That's the lens that we're going to look through. And the Bible says in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 25, God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind, and God saw it was good. That's your creation of your dinosaurs right there. By the way, what day of creation is this? Very good. You guys are impressive. Day 6. What day did God make man? Day 6. Literally from the first day men and dinosaurs were created, they were living together on planet Earth. Men and dinosaurs coexisted. Well, let's talk about the book of Job for a minute. The book of Job. We think that the book of Job is the oldest book in the Bible. Pretty sure about that. So what about Genesis? Doesn't that talk about the beginning? Yes, it does talk about the beginning. But Genesis was written by Moses, okay? Job, there's a guy in the genealogies partway between Noah and Abraham, and his name is Jobab. probably the Job that wrote the book of Job. That would be right about the time of the Ice Age, and Job has more references to snow, ice, sleet, hail, frozen waters than any other book of the Bible. And so somewhere between Abraham and Noah would be Job. And of course, long after Abraham, you're going to get Moses. Well, the book of Job starts with a tragedy in Job's life. It has a really sad start. Here's a guy who's godly, he's serving the Lord, and all of a sudden, God allows this tremendous trial to come into his life. And God allows his children to all be killed. And God allows all his wealth to be stolen and taken away. And then finally, God allows Satan to begin to touch his body, and he breaks out with boils from the top of his head to the bottom of the sea. And Job is miserable. To make matters worse, his friends come to comfort him, and instead of comforting him, they think, well, Job, you must have been a really bad guy for all this terrible stuff to happen to you. They thought they had it all figured out, and of course they were wrong. And so Job, you can see through the course of the book, is getting more and more frustrated. And finally he hits this frustration point in Job 13. He says, surely I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to reason with God. You ever get frustrated with your life? God, what are you doing with my job? God, what are you doing in my family? God, why did you give me this neighbor? I'm looking at some young people today. God, why'd you give me this brother or sister? And we get frustrated with our life. And we maybe feel a little bit like Job. I just wish God would sit there and I could sit here and I could just ask him, God, what is going on? You ever feel that way? If you haven't, you probably will at some point. Because God seems to like us to take us to that point. And we can learn a thing or two by what happens next, because probably God's not going to show up for you, but God did show up for Job. And as Job had all these questions, God comes in Job 38 and answers Job. But here's the weird thing. God never answers any of Job's questions. Instead, God begins to ask Job questions. About 70 questions in all. What kind of conversation is this? Job asks questions. God finally does show up. God doesn't answer any of Job's questions. God asks Job questions, and they're questions that Job can't answer. What is this all about? So here's an example. He says, have you entered into the springs of the sea? Look, Job had never been down in the depths of the sea. We didn't know there were springs in the sea till 1973 with submarines. We went down there, and sure enough, there in the inky jet of the black darkness, there's these whole ecosystems of blind fish and shrimp, and all these guys are shooting up these down. But Job didn't know about that. God says, Job, where were you when I laid the foundations of the world? Job couldn't answer a question like that. What's the point? My friends, this may be the most important thing I say all night. Listen to me. When we are frustrated about what's going on in our life, our primary problem is not the issues in our life. Our primary problem is our view of Almighty God. Follow me. If you have a small view of God, you got big problems because this is on you to figure out. But when you get a proper view of God, that He is omnipotent, hey, He can change any of this stuff like that, and He's in total control of things. He's omniscient. He's making no mistakes. He's got this figured out. And He's eternal. He's not going anywhere. I can just trust Him, right? He's big enough to handle this. I may never know on this earth why. Job probably never knew what happened. The whole purpose and all that was going on behind the scenes. But we can trust God and say, God, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm going to trust you with it. You've got this. My friends, we need to get a fresh view of God. That's the point of the book of Job. And now, with that background, I want to take you to Job chapter 40, and God points to some interesting animals. And he points to a creature called Behemoth. He really gives Job no choice. He says in verse 15, "Behold now Behemoth, look at this guy." This is the biggest thing God made. And God's kind of bragging about how big he is. And then he says, he eats grass like an ox. So scientifically, we would say he's herbivorous. Question, could Behemoth be a T-Rex? Why not? Yeah, he's not a vegan. No, not with teeth like that. I mean, maybe once before the flood, before the curse he was, but no, with teeth like this, he's not living. He can't re-chew like a cow would its cud and stuff like this. It's a meat eater. Could Behemoth be a tiger? Saber-toothed tiger? No, it's not going to be. He is herbivorous. Number two, it says in verse 16, he's got this big belly. His force is in the navel of his belly. He's got this big, powerful belly. Because of verse 16, many commentators have suggested that Behemoth could be an elephant that was known in the Middle East at the time. Other commentators, and if you have a study Bible, you might see this. They say, no, we think Behemoth is a hippopotamus. Well, hippopotamus has got a really big belly. But can I tell you something? The sauropod dinosaurs like this, the Apatosaurus, also had a really big belly. So we haven't narrowed it down too much. There's a lot of creatures that may have a large stomach. But then it says this in verse 17, he moves his tail like a cedar tree. Now the cedar trees are the biggest and the strongest trees known in the Middle East. There's a picture of a cedar tree there. They used them for Solomon's temple. They used them for masts and boats. And so the cedar trees are these huge, strong trees. Well, have you ever seen the tail of an elephant? Here's a nice friendly elephant. Mr. Elephant, can you spin around and show us your tail? What you got? Oh, man. No, that's not a tail like a cedar tree, more like a rope, right? I mean, if you're talking about the distinguishing features of the elephant, you might talk about the trunk, but you're not going to talk about the tail. How about our friend the hippopotamus? Maybe he'll come through a little better. Mr. Hippo, show us what you got. Oh, my goodness. That was like a twig. How about our friend the sauropod dinosaur? Yeah, if you're talking about these guys, long neck, long tail, those are the big things that grab you right away about these fellas. And so here's a picture from my book. The illustrator Richard Dobbs. You see a cedar tree in the background, the tails. It's very significant. But then in my mind, the clincher is verse 19. It says, he's the chief of the ways of God. You know, God is trying to impress Job. That's the whole point of the book. And so God's pointing him to the biggest thing he made to show his power. Next, God's going to put him to the fiercest thing he made to show his strength by the fierceness. He's showing his power to Job. That's the point of the book. So I believe it's the biggest thing God made to walk planet Earth. Well, the big dinosaurs are much bigger than an elephant or a hippo. Some of these, the scientists believe, weigh up to 100 tons, 130, 140 feet long. Huge. And then in Job chapter 40, we're introduced to this fierce creature, a creature called Leviathan. We read, canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook? Now, God's got a little bit of sense of humor, talking about this fierce creature and saying, hey, would you like to go fishing for him? Do we have any fishermen in the room, or maybe fisher ladies? Okay. My friend, what do you go fishing for?
Well, we just caught some bluegills.
Bluegills, okay. I like bluegills. Good panfish, bluegills, crappies, some of those things. What's your name, my friend?
BJ.
BJ. Let's say, BJ, that you and I are in a boat. You kind of get yourself some bait there, and you kind of throw it out, and you kind of set it, and you wait, and all of a sudden your bobber goes down, and you pull it real hard, and up comes a dinosaur. Do you want to bring him in the boat, BJ? No. If you do, I'm going out the other side of the boat. In fact, I'm going to let you take him off the hook. You're going to need a bigger boat. God's got a little bit of a sense of humor, says, you wouldn't want to catch a Leviathan. Why? Well, God says, none is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? You see, my friends, I believe God made these dinosaurs to wow us so that we would think about how big he is. And that's part of why I get so upset that the evolutionists have hijacked, stolen the dinosaurs to put forth a godless theory of origins. That's why I go around the world trying to acquaint people with the truth about dinosaurs. You would be scared if you came around the corner and there was a dinosaur. Can I tell you something? That's nothing. You're going to stand before God someday. You and God. And give an account for how you've lived your life. Are you ready for that meeting? Well, the Bible says this about the Leviathan, this fierce creature. It says that he breathes fire. You say, Dino Dave, really, do you believe in fire-breathing dragons? I do. Mostly because the Bible says so. The Bible doesn't say on a cold day when he breathes, steam comes out and it's kind of like a fire. No, no, no. It says his breath kindles coals. A flame goes out of his mouth. But not only do we have the biblical evidence, we also have amazing historical evidence. That is, we have various cultures that did not interact that talk about fire-breathing dragons. Now, if they're just telling stories, why didn't one have the fire-breathing mosquito, one have a fire-breathing duck, and maybe the other brought in a fire-breathing cat? Why pick on the dragon? I think there really were fire-breathing dragons. And we got a little bit of biological evidence as to how this is possible. How many of you heard of the bombardier beetle? Oh, we got a well-educated crowd here. For those of you that aren't familiar, the bombardier beetle is a small beetle. It's only half as long as your thumb, but it packs quite the punch. In its abdomen, it has two chambers, one with hydrogen quinine, one with hydrogen peroxide. When they come together with a catalyst, boom, you get an explosion, and it's 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Here is a video clip of this little beetle with his amazing squirt gun. He can squirt underneath his own legs without burning himself. Of course, he can squirt right back. He can also squirt up. One of these landed on a boy's head, and the boy thought it was a horsefly. Went to slap it, and he got himself a beetle burn. Yeah, for a little beetle, he packs quite a punch. Well, what if you had this same kind of chemistry in a dragon? And we have some paleontological evidence. There's some of these dinosaurs that have these head crests. I got a Parasaurolophus here. And what is that for? Well, we honestly don't know. I went to the American Museum of Natural History a year and a half ago, and I got to see the actual, the real, and this is huge. This head crest is massive. Can you imagine the amount of chemicals that could be stored in there, and maybe could breathe them out, and when they combine as they're going out his mouth, could turn into a flame. And then we read about a reptilian flying form. I have a whole talk on this. Maybe someday I'll come back and we can visit about it. But it's called the fiery flying serpent. Twice in the prophecy of Isaiah, it references a reptile, kind of like a snake with wings, that's flying. Very likely some kind of a rhamphorhynchoid long-tailed pterosaur. So we have these dinosaurs in the Bible. But not only do we have dinosaurs in the Bible, we have dinosaurs in history. Dinosaurs in history. Now, my friends, I'm going to move fairly quickly. I've got a lot more of this in the book and on the website, but I just want to give you a little smattering here. This is from Natural Bridges National Monument. It's in Utah. And here we have these Indians, I think it's the Anasazi if I remember right, drawing a long-necked, long-tailed dinosaur. Any school kid would recognize that's a dinosaur right there. Here we have figurines from the Chupicara culture in Acambaro, Mexico. And they are from 800 BC. My friends, there's nobody digging up dinosaurs at that point. We didn't start digging up till maybe the late 1600s, 1700s. And of course, the word dinosaur wasn't even invented yet. They just called them dragons. But here they have these amazing figurines. Then we have the Ica stones. I actually brought an Ica stone with me today. You can come take a look at this afterwards. And the Ica stones are the stones that they get in the graves in the southern part of Peru in the Oaxaca Desert. And the Icas, the Nazcas, and some of these civilizations that are there in the southern part of Peru, Paracas, the Mochi, they blackened the rocks and they carved in them, and they would show these dinosaurian depictions. And a lot of these dinosaurian depictions actually have a very fascinating pattern on the skin. They have these bumps. You see these bumps on here? Only more recently have we found fossilized skin. Very rare. Mostly we just find bones. But when we find the dinosaur skin, you see it has those bumps. So how do they know that? Back in 200, 400 AD. Here you have a Nazcan vase with what looks like a dinosaur crawling up. Here you've got some fabric, looks like a dinosaur. You've got these mochi stirrups, ceramic pots, looks like a dinosaur. Here in the jungles of Cambodia, I've been here, And there's all these carvings on these pillars. You see people and you see elephants and horses and stuff, water buffalo. Well, what's that? You know, it looks an awful lot like a stegosaurus. Amazing. There in Cambodia, they obviously knew of this creature. Here we see a seal. You'd kind of push this and you'd kind of roll it over the wax, and it would make a form much like a modern Apatosaurus on that seal. Here's a slate palette from the first dynasty of Egypt. And you see this long-necked creatures, and they're fighting over a sheep. And here we see the walls of ancient Babylon from 600 BC. And there's lions, there's bulls, and they have this dragon. This dragon there, I think they call it, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it has the scales, and it has the claws, and has a rather long tail and a forked tongue. Sarush, I think they call it the Sarush. They're 600 BC. And this is in a museum. This is in a museum in Germany. Here we see a mosasaurus on this urn from Caria, which is modern Turkey. And you see the slender body, the flippers, the thick jaws, the large eyes, the tail fluke, very much like a mosasaurus. Here we see a mosaic, lots of little stones that are glued to the surface, and it has these long-necked creatures with flippers. What is that? Well, it looks an awful lot like a plesiosaur. Awful like a plesiosaur. And so maybe here's a mosaic from the Roman times there in England when the Romans were in charge of England. Here is another Roman mosaic. This is maybe one of the most famous in the world. It's a beautiful mosaic. You can go online and you can look at the Palestrina mosaic. And they're going to show you different parts of the mosaic, but they don't show you this. This is up in the top of the mosaic. I actually went there and took this picture myself. But you see these Africans, they're hunting what looks like a dinosaur. And then in China, lots of dragon stories in China that have the 12 signs of the zodiac. You go to a Chinese restaurant, maybe they're going to have the different years you were born. You can say, oh, you know, I'm a monkey, and my sister's a rooster, and my mom's a pig, or whatever. And so it depends on what year you are. But they have the dragon. Now, why would they pick a fake animal alongside those real ones? Well, I don't think it was mythological. I think they really knew dragons. And in fact, in 1611, the emperor had a person, and his job was to be the dragon feeder. And there's accounts in their histories of Chinese families raising them and using their blood for medicine and prizing their eggs. And even this guy, Emperor Yu, he had dragons pulling his chariot just for a novelty. Dragons. Here is a secular book, and it says the interpretation of dinosaurs as dragons goes back more than 2,000 years in Chinese culture. They were regarded as sacred, as a symbol of power. Here you see a Chinese dragon, but look at the tridactyl footprints, look at the scale pattern, look at the tail, look at this little head crest, much like a oviraptor dinosaur. Here's another one. This came up on the antiquities market in Hong Kong. And it's a jade with this carving, scale-like carving, and look at the head crest, and you have this frill very much like a Saurolophus dinosaur. And this is from before Christ. Whoa, really old. And then medieval times, we have a number of reports of dragons from medieval Europe. This fellow that I'm showing here is Ulysses Aldrovandus. Now you got to understand, Aldrovandus was a highly respected scientist. Even today, many people consider him the father of natural history. As the boats were going out and coming back to Europe, they would bring various specimens, things they discovered, and he would take them and he would put them in his museum in Bologna, Italy. And I had the chance to actually go there to Bologna, Italy, and see his museum. And they still have his crocodilian, they still have his iguana, these different monitor lizards and stuff like this. But he also tells about a dragon, and he very carefully reports there was this guy named Batista, and he was coming with his oxen, and all of a sudden the oxen refused to move, and he's hitting them with a stick, and they refuse to move, and he hears a hissing noise. He comes around to the front of the oxen, and he sees a dragon, and he hits it with his staff, and he kills it. And he gave the little dragon to Aldrovandus, who stuffed it and put it in his museum. So I'm at the museum, I said, hey guys, I see the iguana, and I see the monitor lizard. Where's the dragon? Oh, they said we lost that. Yeah. Then if you've studied British literature, you might be familiar with Beowulf. Beowulf killed a number of dragons, and he himself died fighting a winged dragon. There's the story of St. George. This is very, very popular throughout Europe, and there's many depictions of it, but a lot of these depictions show very real dinosaurian-like creatures that St. George is killing way back in 1450. And then you have these castles. Now, this is a castle, Chateau de Chambord in France. And you have carved into these castles these amazing dragons. Look at this. This is not just an everyday lizard. This thing is walking upright. This one here is so good, it's realistic. Compare this to a baryonyx. Look at the similarity. So you can't tell me that's a lizard. It's not dragging his belly. It's standing upright. You know, like a crocodile. It's truly a dinosaurian type creature, something like a baryonyx. Here's another one. By the way, what's coming out of his mouth? He's breathing fire. Very interesting. Here is a tapestry, and you see a dragon, and over in the bushes you see she's looking back at her little baby, a baby dragon. This is on a tapestry in some of these same castles. Here's another tapestry, a big rug, and it shows a lion fighting a pterosaur. Look at the wings, look at the head crest. Here's the tail. Tremendous detail on this pterosaur. Here's a picture I took in the Church of San Miniato in Florence, Italy. You've got a really very realistic depiction of a pterodactyl. Amazing. And then you have this story from the wetlands near Rome. In 1691, there was a dragon that lived in a cave. He was terrorizing the local population. They got it, they killed it, and they stuffed it, and they mounted it. Well, the mount has since disintegrated since 1691, but they did a woodcut of it, kind of like a drawing, and that has survived. Looks very much like a rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur. Even in this country, we had published reports of cowboys who went out and they saw a winged dragon, and cowboys doing what they do, they shot it and killed it. It was too big to take back, so they just cut off the wing, took the wing back, and the newspaper ran with the story, 1890. They may have killed the last thunderbird that the Indians talk about. I don't know, but we have all these reports, even to right after the Civil War, of people killing dragons. Okay, so we talked about dinosaurs in the Bible, dinosaurs in history. I want to just briefly mention dinosaur fossil analysis. Sometimes when we look at these fossils, like this dinosaur knee bone here, they aren't completely permineralized. They aren't completely fossilized. And so what you see is you see the bones and you see the footprints giving evidence that they just can't be millions of years before man evolved. I think Ken mentioned the Paluxy River area. I've been there multiple times, and there in the river you see clear dinosaur tracks, but these look kind of like human tracks. Now, I will be honest with you, some of them are pretty eroded. Those in the riverbed, Taylor Trail, some of these are pretty eroded, so some people kind of got down on the Paluxy River evidence. But some of the more recent ones, like this, which was actually found in the state park, that's pretty clear to me, the Willett track. And then especially the Delk print. They CT scanned this thing, and they proved that here the matrix is not as compressed as it is under the tracks. You know, when you step down, you're squishing and compressing the material. And so the CT scan showed that under the human track and the dinosaur track, it's more compressed. You can actually kind of see where it kind of goes down and back up on the other side. And so if someone's carving this and faking it, there's not going to be compression, right? They're just going to remove material. So I would submit to you that whoever made this track alongside the dinosaurs, that guy missed the boat. Yeah, he missed the boat. But then, like I say, you know, we have this soft tissue also in the dinosaurs, and evidence of hemoglobin and still recognizable shapes of red blood cells in unfossilized dinosaur bone is powerful testimony against the whole idea of dinosaurs living millions of years ago. This is in a T-Rex bone. Recognizable red blood cells. Now, there's no way this could last even 100,000 years. No way. We know that from the mummies of Egypt and the mummies down in Peru. There's just no way this stuff deteriorates. This tissue and hemoglobin deteriorates very quickly. Look, it's still soft, gooey tissue in a T-Rex bone. The lady that found this, Mary Schweitzer, said, quote, "The laws of chemistry and biology and everything else we know say it should be gone, it should be degraded completely." In 2020, just a few years ago, we found the first dinosaur DNA in a Haploceros fossil. This genetic material is very fragile. It could never last hundreds of thousands, much less millions of years. Here's the actual photo under microscope. You see two cells dividing, and here you see genetic material, DNA, still in a dinosaur cell. How many heard of carbon-14? Okay, carbon-14. Now, carbon-14 dates things that are fairly recent. Carbon-14 has a very short half-life, and when you die and stop taking in carbon-14, very quickly, everybody agrees with this, very quickly, within 80 or certainly 100,000 years, it's all gone. So if you take a dinosaur bone and you say, hey, Mr. Evolutionist, can you carbon-14 date? They're like, we're not going to even bother, because it's not going to have any carbon-14 in it. It's all gone after 100,000 years, and we know that's millions of years old. But some creationists submitted them to secular labs, and lo and behold, in 2012, they dated them as less than 39,000 years old. Now, I'm not saying they're even 39,000, but there's certainly no more than that, because they still have carbon-14 alive in them. The bones themselves tell you it's not millions of years old. It's just not possible. All right, let's have some fun. Let's talk about the possibility there could maybe in some remote areas of the world still be living dinosaurs out there. We have an area of research called cryptozoology. Somebody tell me, what is cryptozoology?
Things hard to find.
Things that are hard to find. Okay, a little more even difficult than that. Way in the back.
Like animals that are kind of like cryptids.
Very good. Animals that are cryptid. But what's a cryptid?
Like Bigfoot, Mothman, Yetis.
Good. So everybody's familiar with Bigfoot, right? That's a good example of it, or the Loch Ness Monster. It's basically hidden animals, or animals that haven't yet been proven to exist by science. And so we have some examples of these types of things. Does anybody know the name of this little fishy fella here? Very good. A bunch of you guys got that one, the coelacanth. They were so sure the coelacanth was extinct, whatever, 100 million years ago, that they said, if you find one of these in a rock, that rock's got to be 100 million years old, because we know for sure they all died out 100 million years ago. And then someone that didn't know any better caught one alive off the coast of South Africa. Oops. They were so sure it was extinct. And then you have this guy, this little fellow over here. Does anybody know what that is? All the way in the back.
I'm pretty sure it's called like a zorse or a zoo.
It's a good guess. He said a zorse. So it's not a zorse. It's actually got a long neck. It's kind of like a half giraffe, half zebra sort of thing? Yeah. Okapi, very good. Bruce, impressive. And so you have an okapi, and the peoples of equatorial Africa, the same place that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, were telling stories of this, and some of the Westerners said, what? What you guys been smoking? A half zebra, half giraffe? Nah. Then they brought in a hide of it, and then eventually they caught a baby one. Now, it didn't survive, but yeah, this thing is very rare, but the okapi, we now know, lives there in equatorial Africa. So could it be that we maybe still have one of the great reptiles out there? Maybe some of the plesiosaurs, the swimming great reptiles, or some of the walking great reptiles, which we call dinosaurs, or maybe some of the flying great reptiles, which we call pterosaurs. I'm going to give you a handful of the key prospects right now, places I've personally researched, and I think the odds are pretty decent, better than even that there might still be something that's there. And so I'm going to talk about first water monsters. In Lake Champlain, not far from where I live, on the border of New York and Vermont, there is Lake Champlain. Been there multiple times, been on boats, been on across the thing and stuff. And here I am on the shores of Lake Champlain. Well, in 1977, Sandra Mancy snapped this famous photo of this, and it looks an awful lot like a plesiosaur. It looks kind of like you can see the hump of the arch of its back and its neck, and even a bit of the front flipper there as it's going through the water. The way she described it's a lot like a plesiosaur. We've got videos of this thing kind of under the murky water, but kind of a neck coming up, some fishermen caught. A number of people have seen this thing. There is a way to get in the ocean from there by the St. Lawrence Seaway, so maybe the creature comes and goes, maybe it lays its young there and then goes back out to sea, don't know. But it seems like there could be something in that lake. How many of you heard of Loch Ness Monster? Everybody knows Loch Ness Monster. Actually, I'm not quite so sure about Loch Ness Monster. Some of the best photos like this one are very much in doubt as to whether they're hoaxes or actually reality. Maybe the best photos are some of these sonar images. They were taken by Dr. Robert Rines, seemed to show a flipper, seemed to show something with a long neck. There's Dr. Robert Rines, here I am with him. I've been to Loch Ness, actually went out on a boat there in Loch Ness, was there for a number of days, went around the island, or around the lake, the loch. And it's very black, very dark, so you put your hand in the water, you can hardly see your fingers. Very mysterious place. The skipper of the boat that I went on actually said, I'd seen a big sonar image go underneath my boat at one point. Again, though, I'm a little bit dubious. Lots of people go around, they've marketed it real well, but you got hotels around it and bed and breakfasts and stuff. How come we don't have some better pictures? Maybe it's extinct now, maybe it once was there, I don't know. I think this one's a lot better. Lake Okanagan. Lake Okanagan in British Columbia, Canada has a monster called Ogopogo. Isn't that a great name for a monster? Ogopogo. Well, Ogopogo lives in this ice age lake, very deep, 800 feet deep. And I actually went up there, spent some days driving around it, and we rented a boat and we went out on the lake. And we actually saw the Ogopogo phenomenon. We saw something like this. Didn't see the head or the tail, but this picture was taken by Ed Fletcher, and you can just see the bumps coming out. That's what we saw. We saw some humps coming out. Here we got a picture of a tail that came up. This is actually a video that was taken by Ken Chaplin. But when we were on the boat, I was driving, my wife was in the back, the kids were all there, because hey, listen, this is pretty accessible, so I brought my family with me. We came around a point where it's Ellison Provincial Park there, and it got real quiet, and I kind of cut the engine, just was kind of like a peaceful moment, and all of us saw these humps come up out of the water and take off at a high rate of speed going away from us and resubmerge. And I'm looking at my wife and say, turn the video camera on! And my wife is looking at my daughter saying, get your hands out of the water! And I'm thinking, honey, really, we'll get her a prosthetic limb. Take a picture! Where's my wife's priorities? Goodness. Well, my beloved wife, she finally got the video camera on, and all we got a picture of was the wake that the creature left. But there's no boat, there's no log. That's the wake it left behind. So that's my fish that got away story. In Papua New Guinea, they talk about a creature called the ropen, R-O-P-E-N. Flies around at night, has bat-like wings, has teeth in its beak, and has a long tail. This thing, they say, has about a 9-foot, 3-4 meter wingspan, and it lives in Papua New Guinea and frequents some of these islands off the coast in the Siassi chain. Well, we went there. It took 27 hours in an airplane to get there. Long flight, bouncing around through Australia and stuff. Eventually we got there. We rented an airplane to take us over, landed us there, and we began to travel around. We hiked all through these. And based on people's reports, we believe the ropen looks something like this, something like a dimorphodon in the group of Rhamphorhynchoid pterosaurs. That's something like the ropen. Well, we talked to lots of people there. We ate some weird stuff. I'm sorry if you guys are just swallowing some cookies right now, but this is what they eat for a snack in Papua New Guinea. You talk about fresh food, this is still kicking on the way down. Yeah, nobody's gonna eat cookies after, sorry Ken. But we would hike up to the tops of these volcanic peaks. And remember, these are volcanic islands. They have a caldera on the top of the peak. It fills with water, and you get these beautiful lakes up here. And our theory was this creature's not drinking salt water. I can't drink from the little streams. It's got a huge wingspan, so maybe it's dipping in and drinking here. So we brought night vision, thermal imagers, and we tented up here on the top, and we would watch all night. My buddy would take half the night. I would take half the night. We were up night after night after night. And on one of the times when I was watching, I saw something between me and the next mountain. It's not a meteor. It's down low, flying through the valley. And my guide said, that's it, you just saw the ropen. This is nighttime. You can see kind of a blip. It's big. I can't tell you the shape of it, but there's something huge flying around at night. There's no way it's just your garden variety bat or owl. We get back to the mainland, And we're going through some of the gift shops, and we saw this. Here is a carving of a medicine man, and on his neck and shoulders is an animal with a snake-like head, a forked tongue. Now, look at how big that thing is. It's just massive. Massive. Okay, let me talk about the Mokele-mbembe. This is my favorite one. The Mokele-mbembe of Africa. Now, the Congo Basin in Africa, you have all these rivers. Can you see these? That's all rivers going through Congo and up there Cameroon. And this whole area, this huge drainage basin is the size of the state of Arkansas. Massive. And the pygmies there in Congo say, yeah, we've killed these things in the Likwala swamps. And you can actually find carvings they make. I bought this carving from the Congo. Looks a lot like a sauropod dinosaur, doesn't it? Well, then Congo kind of descended into civil war. I don't think I mentioned, but this book was written by a guy by the name of Roy Mackal, actually University of Chicago, not far from you guys. And he went there, Smithsonian went there, a number of different expeditions, but then after it descended to civil war, they stopped going. Well, we began to hear reports from the southern part of Cameroon from some missionaries down there that, ooh, the creature's known down there as well. Cameroon's pretty stable, so we flew into Douala, which is on the coast, and we flew into Yaoundé, which is the capital. We rented a four-wheel drive. We went up here to Bertoua and began to take logging roads down through Yakaduma, and then floated on the river on the way down to Malundu. Here you see our guide, Pierre. There's me and Bill Gibbons and our guide, Pierre. Here you see us filling up our 4x4 at a jungle gas station. Eventually, we get down some of the logging roads and we begin to see the pygmies. Oh my goodness, I felt so sorry for these pygmy kids. Scraps for clothing, little bloated bellies. They get bloated like that from malnutrition and the belly buttons stick out. Oh, I just felt so sorry for them. You just want to help them all, but you can't. And they have these thatched huts and they have bark for walls on them. And you can see these pygmies. I mean, these are the tall chiefs of the village, and they're just nowhere near as tall as me. And I'm not terribly tall, 5'9". And so our guide from the city was much taller than them, but we hired some of these pygmies to go out into the rainforest with us, and they carried their machetes and their spears, watching out for us and kind of blazing the trail. And so we went into the rainforest. And I have to understand, this is not a nice vacation spot. It rains every day. You set up your tent in the rain, you hike in the rain, everything's wet, you get foot rot, and you just stink and you smell, and there's no showers, and the sun will come out a little bit, and then it rains again. And you got these big trees, you got prickly trees, you got fire ants, you got gazillion bugs, and a lot of times you just spend your whole day just slogging through swamps and cutting through vines and pricker brushes, and it's just not particularly fun. But the pygmies are tough, and they got us through to one of the locations where this creature was known, on the Bumba River. And so here you see the Bumba River, and we kind of had cut a spot to be able to put in there. And they say, yeah, right in this area with our dugout canoes, we've seen this creature. And they say we come along quietly, we see the creature, and as soon as it sees us, it goes under the water. So very reclusive, and we had brought with us an inflatable raft. So we pump up the raft, and there's Dino Dave floating down the Bumba River. And they might say, wait a minute, Dave, are you insane? What about waterfalls? What about hippos and crocodiles? What about Mokele-mbembe? We prayed a lot. And we would stop along the way at some of the villages, and we would talk to some of the pygmies that lived along the riverbanks. Now, these guys had never seen a weird person with white skin before. The kids would come up and they'd try to scrape the paint off me. They were not influenced by anybody's outside opinions, and we would just talk to them about hippos and crocodiles. And what about the Mokele-mbembe? You know about that? And oh yeah, they could draw it perfectly for you, and they all knew about it. They knew what it eats. They could tell you where it lives and stuff like this. And they'd say it's about the size of a hippo. Much smaller than the fossil record. Things have de-evolved, not evolved. Here's one of the eyewitnesses. He told us about it. And you talk to these eyewitnesses, and they'd say, Dino Dave, look for an area of the river where there's no hippos and no crocodiles and no elephants, because it's very mean. It chases off the other animals. I heard this story a couple times, and I said, wait a minute. You telling me this thing has a small mouth like a snake? How is it driving off a crocodile and a hippo? And they'd say, oh, wait a minute. It doesn't fight with the head. It fights with the tail. I heard that multiple times from the pygmies. The offensive weapon of the Mokele-mbembe is the tail. Well, here you see we were riding in a dugout canoe, we were eating a lot of bananas, and finally we got to the very bottom, right on the border there. This is Congo, this is Cameroon, and there's a ferry that crosses there, and the guard said, the guy that guards the ferry had just seen one pass by 3 months earlier. After we got back, I did up a journal article on it, and there was a team from Canada went. They got a picture of an abandoned nest of a Mokele-mbembe. We have a photograph of footprints. They got some casts of the footprints, but that's a footprint of a Mokele-mbembe, but we don't yet have a picture. Now we plan, God willing, we're going back again in December. And this time we're taking an electric motor, so we'll be very quiet as we go along the rivers. And we plan to go to, as Ken said, some rivers that have never been explored, where we've gotten some positive reports that they may be seen. Well, I got to wrap up here. My time's done, but I just want to end by talking about the accuracy of the Bible. Can I tell you something? The Bible is more up to date than tomorrow's Google headlines. You believe that? The Bible is more up to date than tomorrow's Google headlines. You ever read the Bible and something just poof jumps off the page at you? I got back from Africa and I was reading in the book of the Revelation. And I read this in Revelation chapter 12. Behold, a great red dragon, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. Now this is using the dragon as a metaphor for Satan. And Satan, in his rebellion against God, he takes a third of the angelic host with him and they become demons. But notice what it says is the offensive weapon of the dragon. The tail. Remember what it says in Job? He moves his tail like a cedar tree, like a big club. Bam! Bam! So here you have the pygmies of Africa saying, it's the tail. Here you have the Bible saying, it's the tail. I began to research this matter of the dragon's tail, and I found an old book called the Aberdeen Bestiary that was preserved in the library of Henry VIII. And this is when they knew dragons in those days in Europe, and it says this of the dragon: its strength lies not in its teeth, but in its tail. It kills with a blow rather than a bite. The pygmies were not reading the Aberdeen Bestiary or even the Bible. How did they all know about this? And then modern scientists have finally come on board, and they write in Live Science, the tailbones are gargantuan with huge muscle scars that show it essentially had weaponized a tail that was 30 feet long. Well, welcome to the club. The paleontologists finally figured out what the Bible's been saying for centuries. If you just believe the Bible, you'd be ahead of the scientists. Why? Because the Bible is God's Word. Young people, what's going to be the authority in your life? Is it going to be science? Well, I'm just going to be a man of science. I'm going to be a woman of science. I don't go on faith. I go on science. Question, has science changed in the last 100 years? Oh my goodness, science changed in the last decade, in the last few years. Question, has the Bible changed in the last 100 years? No, that's a foundation you can build your life on, and it's not going to change under your feet. What's going to be the authority in your life? Is it going to be God's Word, or is it going to be the prevailing opinions that blow like the wind? And your life will shift like that and cave in around you. Well, I've got lots more information in the book Chronicles of Dinosauria. Come up, take a look at it. As I said, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBook.com for $16.99, or you can buy it from us tonight for $10. We also have the website. It's free. Go out there, check it out. You can drop me a note. Dino Dave responds to all email. I'll be happy to hear from you. But hopefully you can understand why I like to say dinosaurs are living evidence of a powerful creator. Thank you very much.